One of the most well-known theme parks in the entire world is Disney's Magic Kingdom. This is also one of the most heavily attended theme parks on planet Earth, and I think there's a good reason for that. Disney's Magic Kingdom is a really great theme park. And this is my review for it. This is one of 4 Disney World theme parks, and it was the first one to be added. It's, of course, modeled after the original Disneyland. Now, I do have to note that my visit to this park came in April of 2021, and obviously it was much different back then on how the park was run. And that's why there's barely any people in the footage that I have from the morning, because the rope drop was done differently. But outside of what has changed since my visit, I will try to review this park best I can. And right off the bat, I want to say walking around this place is a joy. The theming, fountains, and trees make a really immersive theme park experience. This, to me, feels like the definition of a Disney theme park. Now, there is one area that I don't think is quite as strong as the others, and that's Tomorrowland. Firstly, this land feels weird and outdated in spots, and while I'm sure Tron will help to some extent, the lack of shade is also alarming. From my personal experience, Tomorrowland was the warmest section of the park, and maybe it's just because the time we were there, I don't know, but it definitely felt warmer than the other sections because of all the concrete. And I know that theme parks are pretty much concrete jungles anyway, but it really does feel like that when you're in Tomorrowland. But outside of my Tomorrowland nitpicks, this park really does well in the appearance department. I think this is one of the best looking parks out there, and it's also helped that a lot of the rides are immersive and have good queue lines. As a general rule, due to how much more space they have in Florida, the queue lines are typically better at Disney World than at Disneyland, and this is certainly apparent when you compare Disneyland and Magic Kingdom. Speaking of rides, this park has so many good ones, but we'll get there in a minute. Before we get there, I wanted to mention the layout of this park. I think in most cases, Disney does a great job with their theme park layouts, and this is certainly the case at Magic Kingdom. It isn't really confusing at all, in fact. This is certainly helpful when you're there for the first time. And ultimately, the simple thing of not getting lost when you're walking around really improves the experience when you're at the park. And whenever you get to a ride, you're treated with fast operations. Slow ops can be very frustrating when you're at a theme park, so it's great you won't have to worry about them in a park as busy as Magic Kingdom. It's the little things that can help you have a great day. Speaking of, I would strongly recommend purchasing the Genie Plus Lightning Lane Fast Pass. This will help you a lot. Now, as promised, let's dig into Magic Kingdom's ride lineup. They have 4 coasters with another on the way. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is a really good ride. This is the inferior of the 2 Thunder Mountains in the United States, but it's still great, as the rockwork, laterals, and pops of airtime make a great family coaster. In my opinion, this is what a family coaster should be like. It's something that anyone can enjoy and anyone can ride multiple times. Speaking of iconic family coasters, how about Space Mountain? This is the better of the 2 in my opinion, and it is a great ride. Unlike the Space Mountain at Disneyland, this dual-track version focuses a lot more on airtime moments. And while the trains certainly aren't my favorite as they're rather awkward to get into and out of, the airtime you get, especially if you sit in the back seat, makes up for it. It also feels way faster because you can't see where you're going, and there are so many fun, unexpected drops. The park's kiddie coaster is Barnstormer, and I think this is actually a really solid kids coaster. It's a decent size for the genre, and there's even some light theming as well. It's unlikely that I'll ever ride this coaster again, but I'm still glad I got on it. And I'm sure this is the first coaster, or one of the first, for so many kids out there. The final coaster is Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which I have so many mixed thoughts on. On one hand, the ride is smooth and it has a great dark ride scene, but on the other hand, it's just over way too quickly. If this ride was a minute or 2 longer, and it had another dark ride scene, I think I would like it much more. As it is, it's enjoyable and fun, but it's not an elite ride. And watch out for this coaster's line, it can be nasty. And while the coasters here are solid, the dark ride department is where Magic Kingdom shines. Starting with Splash Mountain. This particular Splash Mountain is actually my favorite ride of all time. And it's sad that A, I only got 3 rides on it, and B, it's going to be rethemed soon. But until then, do not miss this log flume when you're at Magic Kingdom. If you miss it, you'll be sad that you did. This isn't the only water ride at Magic Kingdom though, and another one is quite good too, Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a superb ride in its own right, featuring a bunch of great animatronics. While we're on the topic of boat rides, who could forget the world-famous Jungle Cruise? While, for the most part, the puns are absolutely terrible, this ride is still loads of fun. The skippers always do a great job, which is why this ride is such a joy. Heading over to Fantasyland, there's a few dark rides of note. Peter Pan's Flight is unique because you fly through the scenes instead of driving through them. While this isn't my favorite, it is pretty solid. It doesn't have all the effects that the one at Disneyland does though, like the pixie dust. With that being said, while it is short, it is worth a go. A dark ride I probably like more than I should is the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This is very similar to the version at Disneyland, but it's a little bit different in the order of scenes, and there's a few extra ones too, my favorite of the bunch being the Tigger scene. You also ride in honey pots instead of honeycombs, but that's just a small difference. Winnie the Pooh is pretty much all you could ask for a classic, cute Disney dark ride. It's a Small World is a ride some people love and some people hate. I actually didn't ride it in Magic Kingdom, but I have ridden the version at Disneyland, and it's alright. I will say though, the facade at Disneyland is far superior being outside than inside. Speaking of outdoor facades, Little Mermaid has a great one, and the ride is pretty good too. Little Mermaid is an Omnimover dark ride, like Buzz Lightyear, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Some of the scenes on this are pretty expansive, and I always enjoy riding it. And since I just mentioned Buzz Lightyear, let's talk about that one. This is an interactive shooting dark ride that also uses the aforementioned Omnimover system. While the guns have a more restricted range of motion on this one, it's always fun to see who can rack up the highest score. Spoiler, not me. The final ride that uses this system is Haunted Mansion. Every time I ride this ride, no matter what park it's at, it blows me away. Not in the sense of it being an elite ride, but the effects are just so good, and to think how long ago they did some of them is amazing. This ride holds up quite well. This park also has some interesting show attractions. Most weirdly, Country Bear Jamboree. I still don't know what happens on this, it's just so weird. In a way though, this attraction is charming, it's just, I don't know. But because of how weird it is, I think you should definitely give it a go. There's also the classic Carousel Progress. This one might need a few updates, but the air conditioning is certainly refreshing on a hot day. And of course, you have to see Walt Disney World's Enchanted Tiki Room at some point too. Finally, Mickey's PhilharMagic is quite underrated in my opinion. Whenever I've seen this show, I actually enjoy it more than most people say they do. So yeah, Magic Kingdom has absolutely no shortage of shows. As for flat rides, Magic Kingdom is pretty limited, though they do have a surprising 4 spinning rides. 5 if you count the carousel. My favorite of the bunch is Astro Orbiter because of the views it provides, given the fact that it's placed on a building. Other than that though, none of the other flat rides stand out. Finally, there are some transportation and observation rides, most notably Autopia, the boats, and the train. And I think that finally does it for Magic Kingdom's ride lineup. That took a while because there are so many great rides here. While this park does well at many things, I think this is the area they do best in. And as mentioned before, the operations are always great, and the staff members are always friendly as well. This is one of those parks that could have created the term atmosphere, because of how good this park's atmosphere is. I also want to touch on the food. I think pretty much anything you get here should be just fine. There weren't any bad meals from my personal experience, and when you compare it to the other Disney parks, usually the food is top notch. This is a great thing considering how important food is. This park also has very long hours. Typically, you can be there from about 8 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m. Or sometimes even later than that. Do note though, if you start your day at another Walt Disney World park, you can only park hop starting at 2 p.m. This means though that you could still realistically have 8 or 9 hours at Magic Kingdom if you park hop there at 2 o'clock. However, given all this park's amenities, I would recommend a full day here. And if you're only going to Disney World and you can only visit one park, I would probably recommend this one even though it isn't my favorite. Disney's Animal Kingdom is my favorite, but because of all the rides at this park, this is the one I would ultimately recommend visiting. So, yeah, I recommend Disney's Magic Kingdom if it wasn't apparent enough at this point. I think this is one of the world's top theme parks. If you love Disney, dark rides, or just a quality theme park experience, Magic Kingdom should be a great time. However, you have been warned in advance for the crowds that you can experience and the Florida weather. Like any theme park trip, just plan accordingly. There is just so much to do at this park, and I had an absolutely great time. Now, I want to note one thing before ending this video. I will not be making a review for Epcot. It's not because I don't like Epcot, but it's because when we visited Walt Disney World last April, it really just didn't get a fair shake. Our time at this park was very limited, and we barely even saw it in the daytime. So we'll definitely have to make that a priority next time we go to Disney World. But anyways, just wanted to make a note of that. So that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.